Wood County Board of Education met tonight to talk about school mergers. Our Haley Lanham has more from a student and the superintendent.
The Wood County Board of Education held a special meeting to discuss the closure of Van Divender Middle School to merge to Jackson Middle and Hamilton Middle Schools. Parents, staff, and students had the chance to share their thoughts and feelings. Before a decision was made, Aaron Russell, an 8th grader at Van Divender Middle School, shared with me that he is worried about his younger peers because he, quote, doesn't think they will feel very at home. From Aaron's experience, he describes Vandy as amazing and like one big family. So I asked Aaron, why was he worried about the school switch? And this is what he said, quote, because they would try to pick on me because I went to Vandy, and I am pretty big, so I feel like it would be a lot worse for small people, unquote. He stated that a lot of things you hear are rumors passed down from generations. Superintendent Christy Willis stated with the merging middle schools, both Jackson and Hamilton will have a full-time counselor and one who will work 50% with both schools. Both schools will also have 6 teachers for teams for all content courses.
Right now, each school, we have one counselor at each middle school. With the merger, we're going to add a half-time to each Hamilton and Jackson Middle School. If it was English, language arts, math, science, and social studies, if they do not have 6 right now, we will increase that number so there's 6 per content area.
The board also voted on closing Fair Plains Elementary and merging it with Martin Elementary. For more information, you can visit WTAP.com. In Wood County, I'm Haley Lanham with WTAP News.